It is the breaking news we've been following all night out of Milwaukee. Brendan Dassey's murder conviction of Teresa Halbach has been overturned by a federal judge.
His story made national headlines after the Netflix series Making a Murderer premiered. Dassey was convicted of the 2005 murder of freelance photographer Teresa Halbach in Manitowoc County. His uncle Stephen Avery was also convicted in the murder. Avery is currently appealing his conviction. Our Claire Cayley starts our team coverage tonight to explain how the judge made this decision. Claire.
Well, Jeff and Cammie, the judge was really looking at two things. Did Brendan Dassey have ineffective counsel, and should his confession have been allowed in court? The judge decided Dassey did not prove he had ineffective counsel, but he did determine Dassey's confession should not have been used at trial. In fact, the judge said, quote, "It is the conclusion of the court that this case represents the sort of extreme malfunction in the state criminal justice system," end quote. Court documents say investigators used leading questions when interrogating Dassey, which made it difficult for them to tell if he really knew the facts or was just agreeing with investigators. The judge believes investigators repeatedly claimed to already know what happened to Halbach and that Dassey had nothing to worry about. The decision states the repeated false promises made by investigators, along with Dassey's age, intellectual deficits, and lack of a supportive adult, led the judge to decide the conviction was involuntary.
A lot of people asking the question now, does Dassey go free?
We looked into that, and the court documents say that the state has an option to appeal the decision, or they have 90 days to retry the case.
What if that does not happen?
If that doesn't happen, Dassey will be released from prison.
All right, thanks, Claire.
Claire, thank you. As this breaking story unfolds, we've started to get reaction from those involved. We were actually there when one of Stephen Avery's brothers learned about Dassey's overturned conviction. Emily Matesic joins us now live from Waupun to tell us that part of the story. Emily.
Yeah, Jeff, we caught up with Earl Avery, one of Stephen Avery's brothers, as he was leaving Waupun Correctional here in Waupun after visiting his brother Stephen. He says he didn't know about the reversal in the Dassey case until he came out of the prison and turned his cell phone on and had several messages about it. While the news comes as a surprise to Earl Avery, he says he is hopeful for what it means to his brother Stephen's case.
Does this give you any more hope?
Well, sure. You know, he'll be out of there sooner or later. You know, like he says, the truth will always come out.
His brother was very upbeat during their visit today, and that Stephen can't talk about his appeal, but that Kathleen Zellner, Stephen Avery's appellate attorney, was here visiting with him this morning. Earl Avery also told us that he doesn't think Brendan Dassey will be retried because he believes that in the court of public opinion, the public is supportive of Brendan Dassey. But as we know, the court of public opinion in this case does not matter. It will be up to the state to decide whether or not to retry Brendan Dassey. For now, we're live in Waupun. Emily Matesic, Action 2 News.
Thank you, Emily. We're also hearing from county officials on Dassey's overturned conviction. Our George Rodas is in Manitowoc gathering reactions. George.
We have reached out to the county sheriff's department here in Manitowoc. We have not heard back from their office, but we did speak to the county executive here, Bob Ziegelbauer, who has spoken to us in the past about the Avery and Dassey cases. He says this announcement took him by surprise. He says he's not thrilled with any attention this brings on his city and his county after what they've already been through. Here's what he had to say.
I don't know what's next. I presume that the order will be appealed by the state justice department, but I don't know. It's still kind of new to me. I have a lot of concern for the family of the victim, and that's one thing we can't forget.
Teresa Halbach and her family on his mind tonight. We are still working to get more reactions from Manitowoc, and if we get them, we will bring them to you on air and online, that is, at WBAY.com. But for now, live in Manitowoc, George Rodas, Action 2 News.
Thank you, George. Well, the news of Brendan Dassey's overturned conviction leads many questioning what is next for both Dassey and Stephen Avery at this point. Michelle Clemens joins us live in the newsroom with what she found out today. Michelle.
Cammie, we've reached out to at least a dozen people related to the cases, including Brendan Dassey's lawyers, one of which is out of town, but says he's aware of the ruling. We hear from him soon. We also reached out to Stephen Avery's attorney, Kathleen Zellner. She says she was in Wisconsin visiting Avery today and says he is happy for Brendan. She says in a statement, quote, We know when an unbiased court reviews all of the new evidence we have, Stephen will have his conviction overturned as well, end quote. Dean Strang, Avery's former attorney, also got back to us and says in a statement, quote, "We are thankful and proud that a federal court fulfilled its fundamental role for Brendan Dassey today. In doing so, this federal court served all Americans," end quote. The Director of Communications for the Wisconsin Department of Justice also responded, saying the department is reviewing the order and has no comment at this time. We also reached out to Dassey's former defense attorney, Len Kaczynski. As we told you moments ago, the judge today decided that Dassey did not have ineffective counsel. Kaczynski says he's relieved by today's ruling.
In the sense that there was an issue that I preserved for appeal before it was off the case, I was in a sense gratified because the fact that that was the basis for Magistrate Judge Duffin's decision, so that I did my job.
Now, reaction continues to pour into our newsroom tonight, and we'll be following it all and have the latest details tonight on Action 2 News at 10.
Now, the news of Brendan Dassey's possible release from prison has left those who knew Teresa Halbach angry and frustrated.
Some are trying to find ways to turn the attention back onto Halbach instead of those serving prison time for her death. Emily Natasik continues our top story coverage tonight and tells us how.
Every day I come down here, I always say hi to her.
Almost 11 years after Teresa Halbach, the young, bright photographer that Tom Pierce helped to mentor, was killed, he still thinks about her daily. And while it's hard to do with the recent news of Brendan Dassey's possible release from prison, Pierce tries to only focus on the young woman who brought so much life to his studio.
She had a big smile on her face and always happy and always trying to do better than what she did. And in her pictures, in her photography, and in her own life.
And that's why those who knew Halbach are trying to turn the focus away from the recent court ruling and back onto the woman who meant so much to so many.
We had a lot of similarities, and we actually called each other Calumet County because that's where obviously we were from. So we just kind of had like that small town bond. So and every time I would see her after college and we'd run into each other, it was like we'd pick up right where we left off.
Jill Walsh lives in Chicago now, but as she prepares to come home this weekend to participate in the Cheesehead Run in Halbach's hometown of Hilbert, she's put out a call for action on social media, encouraging anyone participating in the Cheesehead Run or the High Cliff Ultra on Saturday to wear blue, Halbach's favorite color.
We're in her hometown, we're in the places she grew up, the streets she walked, and I think it's a great way to just show community support.
Walsh's request is gaining attention and has been shared dozens of times on Facebook. Now she's just hoping that people follow through.
If only 50 people do it, then fine. But I know every time I'm going to be running on Saturday, if I see somebody wearing a blue shirt, I'm definitely going to smile and think that it's just part of the movement.
In the Fox Valley, Emily Matesic, Action 2 News.
The man who prosecuted the cases against Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey is speaking exclusively to Action 2 News about Friday's ruling that overturned Dassey's conviction. Avery and Dassey were both found guilty in 2007 for the 2005 murder of Teresa Halbach. Last Friday, a federal magistrate overturned Dassey's conviction, and now it's up to the state attorney general's office to decide whether to appeal the decision or retry Dassey. The state has 90 days to take action. News 5 Emily Matesic sits down with Ken Kratz, who told us about his reaction to the overturned conviction.
Like many following the cases against Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, former Calumet County District Attorney Ken Kratz, who led the prosecution of both men, was surprised to hear Dassey's conviction had been overturned by a federal magistrate, especially since it hinged on Dassey's confession to authorities, something that had been argued in the past.
Usually a suppression hearing that has already gone through all of the state courts, the circuit court level, the Court of Appeals, and of course the Supreme Court decided not to even hear it. It is so unusual for a federal court to weigh in on that.
What's more surprising to Kratz is that the magistrate's decision cited articles written by Dassey's defense team.
It really shows you, I think, the slanted nature of this, at least the decision and why it happened and where it came from.
While no longer part of the decision-making process, Kratz believes the Attorney General will take a serious look at the situation and talk with the Halbach family before deciding how to proceed. But if it were up to him, Kratz says the logical thing to do is file an appeal.
To appeal the decision to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. The reason I say that is it leaves those other 3 options open.
In the meantime, Kratz, like the rest of the public, will wait to see what the state decides to do.
To be sitting on the sideline with the rest of the citizenry and only being able to sit back and just hear what happens from news agencies or something else is an awkward, uncomfortable position for me personally.
In the Fox Valley, Emily Matesic, Action 2 News.
Well, Cammie and Jeff, the state attorney general's office had 90 days from August 12th to either release Brendan Dassey from prison, retry him for Teresa Halbach's murder, or file an appeal to that magistrate's order. And today, the AG filed a notice of appeal. Now, you may recall, in overturning the conviction last month, the magistrate believed investigators made false promises to Dassey, telling him he had nothing to worry about when confessing to raping and killing Teresa Halbach. The magistrate also said Dassey's age of 16 at the time of the confession, combined with his lack of intellectual ability, made his confession inadmissible. Now, in a statement sent with Attorney General Brad Schimmel's filing, he says, quote, "We believe the magistrate judge's decision that Brendan Dassey's confession was coerced by investigators and that no reasonable court could have concluded otherwise is wrong on the facts and wrong on the law." Schimmel continues, 2 state courts carefully examined the evidence and properly concluded that Brendan Dassey's confession to sexually assaulting and murdering Teresa Halbach with his uncle Stephen Avery was voluntary, and the investigators did not use constitutionally impermissible tactics.
Emily Matesic has covered every angle of this story since it broke more than a decade ago. She's live in the Fox Valley newsroom to break down today's developments. Emily.
Well, Cammie, Brendan Dassey's attorneys say he will not be released from prison today, but they are hopeful that he will be sent home soon while his case is being appealed. In the order handed down today by the same federal magistrate who overturned Brendan Dassey's conviction back in August, Judge William Duffin said the United States Probation Office will be required to monitor Dassey upon his release. Late this afternoon, the Probation Office told me it's never dealt with a situation like this in its district, so it is unsure on when Dassey will actually be released from custody. Now, as part of the order, the probation office would still need to do a home visit of where Dassey would like to stay, and that visit has not yet been done. According to the order, other conditions of Dassey's release included not violating any laws. He must be present for all court appearances. Dassey can't own any firearms or possess any controlled substances, and he is prohibited from having any contact with Teresa Halbach's family. According to the order, Dassey will be assigned a social worker who will help him transition back to life outside of prison, a place he has been for more than a decade. Dassey's half-brother tells us he's elated with the news and is hopeful his brother will be sent home soon.
Well, I just hope to see him smiling ear to ear. Honestly, I'm sure it's going to be a scary and exciting experience to be out after 10 years. And, I just pray that, I pray for protection over his life, and I'm sure everybody's going to show him around.
Now, Kathleen Zellner, the attorney who is appealing Stephen Avery's conviction, tweeted this afternoon, "Our bet is that Brendan Dassey will be at his family's Thanksgiving table no matter what Wisconsin's Attorney General files."
Yeah, Jeff and Sarah, Brendan Dassey was slated to be released from this prison behind me no later than 8 o'clock tomorrow night. But just before noon today, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals responded to an emergency motion filed by the state attorney general yesterday to stay Brendan Dassey's release. Now, the 3-judge panel out of Chicago didn't offer an opinion on why it issued the stay. It simply granted it. This is the same court that will ultimately decide whether or not to overturn the August ruling by Judge William Duffin that overturned Dassey's conviction. In response to today's order, Dassey's legal team released a statement that said, "We are disappointed more than words can say. The fight goes on." Meanwhile, Stephen Avery's attorney took to Twitter saying, "The 7th Circuit just denied Brendan Dassey's release pending appeal outcome. Never easy." As for the state attorney general's office, they simply put out a release saying that Brendan Dassey would remain behind bars and he will stay here at Columbia Correctional as this appeal process continues. Reporting live in Portage, Emily Matesic, Action 2 News.